Mhm.
There we go. Yes, I see you. It's telling us get notified when Eden Central School goes live. Oh, next. There we go.
Well, I believe I am live at this point. So, hello and welcome to anyone who's joined us this evening. My name is Jeff Sortisio. I am the Eden Central School District Superintendent, appointed back on July, or actually I started on July 1st. This is my inaugural first ever Hope This Works Correctly Facebook Live event. My goal tonight is to provide any of our viewers with a brief introduction to me and what brought me to Eden and give you a bit of my background. I would rather do some introductions in person, but under our current situation, I think this is the best way that I can reach a wide cross-section of viewers. I also want to talk about and will present some information about our budget revote, which is scheduled for Tuesday, July 28th from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the high school and middle school auditorium foyer. And we will also touch on some return to school information, but I'm going to ask one of our viewers now if you would drop a comment in there so I know that I can see comments, because your comments and questions will really drive this discussion. So anyone just wants to throw something in there so I know that that is working correctly, I would really appreciate it. So on way of background, as I said a moment ago, I started recently in Eden. Prior to my time in Eden, I was the superintendent in the Fredonia School District for about 3 years. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Kim. I can see those comments. I appreciate it. And now I know. Thank you, Jeanette and Jessica. Okay, got it. I know how to work the comment section now. I have learned something new today. So prior to coming to Eden, I was the superintendent in Fredonia, another small rural community that I really enjoyed. But the opportunity to come much closer to home to a district that is really, is my second home, it was really important to me. I think being in such close proximity will help me to get to know the community at a much deeper level. That will be both professionally and personally rewarding. And I look forward to some face-to-face contact with our community and certainly our students. Before Fredonia, I was the high school principal at Frontier for 9 years. Really great experience there as well. I learned a lot. And prior to going to Frontier, I spent 11 years in the West Seneca School District as an assistant principal and as a school counselor. Those experiences are obviously you bring all those experiences with you. But I had a little bit of a different path into education, and I didn't realize till after undergrad, really, that I really enjoyed working with young people. And I found that out through my volunteer coaching experience. So coaching led me to education, and it's been a great fit. One of the benefits of working in a district our size, about between 1,300 and 1,400 students, is it's a much more intimate setting. So you get to know students and staff and families at a much deeper level. And as I said a moment ago, I find that really personally and professionally rewarding. So that's a little bit about me. Probably more than most of you want to hear, but it's my Facebook Live, so I get to control the content a little bit. So you're here tonight I'm sure because you want to hear a little bit more about the budget revote. I will do my best to answer the questions that I know of out there from what I've seen in various mediums. But if you have any specific questions about the budget, I will do my best to answer them. If you're one of those folks that would rather not put a comment on Facebook, but you have questions, you can always reach me at the district office, either via email or phone. You can find both of you can find the contact information on the Eden Central School District website. So on to our budget discussion. I'm going to start off with a little bit of information about why we're going to revote. I did see some questions out there about, well, why would the school go to revote? We voted already. And you did, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate the feedback that we got from the community. And working with the Board of Education and our business official, Laura Feldman, we took a relook at the budget, and we're able to reduce it a bit. Not a lot, because it was a fair budget in its original form, but we were able to make some reductions, and thus it made sense to go out for a second vote. Now, I have heard questions about how many times is this district going to go out and get us to vote, and the answer is unequivocally 2. Okay. The original vote back in June, and the revote on Tuesday. By law and regulation, we're only allowed to go out for 2 votes. And we have developed what's called a contingent budget, that if a budget doesn't pass, a school district has to develop a contingent budget. A contingent budget is very limiting, and you are limited to no increase in school taxes, and you are limited to no purchases of equipment. There is what's called an administrative cap. So anything that falls under administrative costs are limited to the same amount as previous years. And there's a lot of different things that go into administrative cap. It's certainly not just salaries for administrators, but it's a lot of support staff salaries and some benefits and so on and so forth. And then the real part that I think is important for the community to understand is, if we are on a contingent budget, let me say this a different way. I had a great meeting with Missy Hartman the other day. I think we're going to be great partners in this town. I appreciated the time that she took to share with me what her goals were and how we can work together. The school district and the town have worked great together. We have what's called a reciprocal agreement, meaning the school district doesn't charge for use of facilities. And I know there's a Tuesday night concert series. I know there's various sports leagues that use our fields. I'm sure there's different groups that use space in the different buildings. If we are on a contingent budget, we would have to charge for all of that use. That's not the way I want to start my time in Eden and telling the community that you have to pay to use our facilities. But under the regulation, we would be required to do that. So that's the negative side about a contingent budget. What I think is the positive side about the budget that's up for revote is that it really is a minimal increase. If you have time or in the inclination, we did post a video. Unfortunately, I'm the star on that video as well, on our district website just the other day, that talks about it's all about the budget. What I can tell you here is that the increase is 1.82%, and that equates to about $32 for a house that's valued at $100,000. Now, I'm told that's about the average of the assessed value of homes in Eden. So most of our stakeholders would be looking at about a $32 increase for their school taxes. There's other reasons why this budget is so critical for us, and I want you to know that each time I've met with this board, with the Board of Education, they've talked about how important it is to be as fair as possible to our community, to be cognizant of what our community is facing these days in terms of their own needs, employment issues, so on and so forth, and that if we do ask for an increase, it's because we absolutely need it. And I think that's the right attitude to have whenever you're asking your community to contribute more. In this case, it's not only, our budget is contingent not only on local taxes, but it's contingent on state aid. And state aid, it is we're in a situation right now where our state aid is less than we expected. We're actually, it's called a flat state aid contribution, meaning we're getting the same amount that we did last year. We all know the costs increase between salaries and health benefits and so on and so forth. And there is a real possibility, I won't call it a possibility, I'll call it a probability, that we will see a reduction in state aid sometime during the school year. You may have heard the governor say that aid, as much as 20% in aid, could be cut this year. And we don't know what that number means. We don't know if that means 20% for all education aid across the state, or does that mean that each district will lose whatever the governor and it's really the division of budget feels is fair for that particular area. So, we are going into uncertain times, and I haven't even started talking about the response to the pandemic yet. So we are going into uncertain financial times when it comes to aid. And another revenue stream, and that's what they're called. It doesn't sound like the nicest phrase, but our revenue streams are local taxes, state taxes, and also in Erie County we get a component of sales tax. So when you go to the store and you buy a taxable item, part of that tax comes back to the school district. It's not a surprise to anyone who's listening to this that sales tax revenue is way down. We all know that in our own lives. And if we're going out to dinner less or retail shopping less and less purchases of gasoline and so on and so forth, it makes sense then that the amount of sales tax revenue then for all those folks who benefit from it is down considerably. So we're facing a state aid cut. We know we're going to have less sales tax, and we're trying to put the best education program we can forward for our students so that they have opportunities equal to or better than some of our friends in neighboring districts. So if there's any questions, again, if you have any questions about the budget, please drop them in the comments. I would love to hear them. I would love to make sure that at the end of this hour that I've set aside, I've answered any question that's really out there. I will say that the one area that also was questioned a lot is our use of reserves. This year, the Eden Board directed our business official to utilize reserve funds, unallocated reserve funds, to really a historically high level. And that was done to offset the ask. And when I say the ask, I mean the ask for increase in taxes. So let's use as much money as we can that we have that could go in other areas, but let's use as much as we can so that when we ask our residents or community members for a little bit more in taxes, it's as little as possible. That's great business. That's great business, and that's understanding and knowing your community and being kind in that way. There are other areas too, though. I saw some things out on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook quite a bit. I probably spent more time on it recently because I knew there were some questions out there about the budget. Part of the reason I chose this forum, the Facebook Live forum, is because I thought maybe the folks that were posting about the budget, maybe they'd be more inclined to watch this video. But I do want you to know, from a personal standpoint, my hope and expectation, if community members have concerns, they'll reach out to me directly. Again, email, phone, stop in the office. I think you're going to want my focus to be on making our district as best as it can be, and not really, searching social media for any of those issues that may come up. So please let me know, and don't expect that if it's posted on social media, I'm going to see it, because I probably won't. And I hope you understand that. Yeah. So, and you know, I was going to talk about reserves for a second. I do want to say that I'm trying to improve my own footprint on social media. I do have a Twitter page. It's that I think is linked to. I know it's linked to our Eden Twitter page. I started a personal Facebook page, but quite honestly, I don't anticipate posting a lot on there as superintendent. Any posts that I have any information that I have that will be pushed out on Facebook will be on the Eden Facebook page, which is how you found me tonight. Okay. Talking about reserves a little bit, we do have a number of reserves that, and when I say reserves, they're allocated money. That means when the voters approved two different proposals back in June, a bus proposal and a technology proposal, all the money that was approved there was set aside in an account that has a specific title, and it's for a very specific purpose. So you can imagine a transportation reserve is for bus purchases. We are very limited in how we can move that money around. It's a highly regulated component of a school budget. So we really look to put the appropriate amount in reserves. And then if we have anything left over, because our revenues came in greater or our expenses came in lower, then that money is typically allocated to the next year's budget to, again, reduce the tax impact on taxpayers. One of the last things I want to talk about in terms of budget on the financial side of things is there's a perception out there that since school buildings weren't open, there was a huge savings, that districts experienced a windfall of savings because school buildings weren't open. Now think about how I'm presenting that, okay? Because I'm not saying schools weren't open, because we were, but school buildings were not for the most part. So we went out in March, and March, April, May, and June, for the most part, school buildings were closed. The savings there is a bit in electricity, although your base infrastructure still had to run. You may not have turned as many lights on, but you still had to make sure your boilers were running and your switches and your servers were running on the technology side. District offices were still open. There were still parts of buildings that were open. Districts did reduce the heat, so buildings weren't heated to the same level. Of course, we're coming off a very mild winter, and most buildings aren't climate controlled in terms of air conditioning. So when June and July rolled around, that really wasn't much of a savings either. Our calculation on the reduction in utility cost was about $100,000. That's a lot of money in your pocket or my pocket, but in terms of a budget that's over $30 million, over $31 million, it's not really that great amount of money. So I'm going to take a 10-second break here so I can get my voice back. Again, any questions or comments, please just drop them right into that comment box. Okay. All right. You are well informed then. If no one's going to ask me any questions, I have to assume that I hit all the hot button topics when it comes to the budget, or you're all here for a different reason. So the last thing I'm going to say about the budget, I'm hoping to remember to say this again. Tuesday, July 28th, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the auditorium foyer of the high school, middle school. We will be practicing social distancing and any and all of the guidelines that are provided for us for an in-person vote. If you are someone that needs an absentee ballot, you will need to contact district office directly tomorrow. We will need you to pick up a request for a ballot. You're going to have to pick up the ballot and drop it off as well. because the 28th is only a few days away, and we simply don't have time to mail things. Okay, I think I got that. Mindy, you're very welcome. I'm pleased to be doing this. So thank you for that positive comment. All right, ready to move on to school reopening. This is going to be a heavy topic, and interesting point today. Later today, I was on a Zoom conference call with about 350 superintendents across the state, and 20 or so folks from the state education department and the New York State School Superintendents Council. And one of the things that I was relieved about is that many of the questions that the people that I report to in Albany, they have the same questions that I have. So you may know that we received about 145-page document from the state education department. And I mentioned the length of the document because I do think state ed deserves some praise for the length they went to provide schools with as much information as possible. We also received guidance from the Department of Health in about 25 pages or so. And then, of course, we receive information from the governor's office primarily through executive orders. So, and the interesting thing is when you have two different agencies that are working in parallel, there's oftentimes a tad bit of a disconnect where one document says do it this way and another document says do it that way. And then you have superintendent's interpretations, you have the New York State United Teachers interpretation, and so on and so forth. So you have lots of bodies, lots of really big groups trying to sort out how we reopen schools. And, we are taking, and when I say we, I mean really superintendents in general, schools in general. Certainly I'm lucky to continue working with Area 2 superintendents who are a really collegial group. My good friend Scott Taylor and I, who's in North Collins, have talked quite a bit. And, it's really good to have a partner so close next door, particularly because, sometimes we have some crossover with students as well. But we're really trying to look at big picture right now. Area 2 calls it the big rocks, the umbrella of how you reopen schools, and whittle that down to really the most minute detail. And I'll give you an example. In the state ed document, it talks about what we have to do in terms of hydration for our students, how many water fountains or bottle refillers we have to have per 100 students. You can't use a traditional water fountain anymore because of the concern about the transmission of COVID, of course. And so we have to have a hydration plan. We have to have a plan for our restrooms and how they're going to be cleaned and so on and so forth. Those are some of the smaller items. But I'm going to back up a second to let you know, in Eden, we have, I think we're up to 36 people on a really, I'll call it an umbrella committee. It's a district level committee. It's made up of some parent members who happen to be business owners in our community as well, support staff, teachers, administrators. Our school resource officer joins us when he can. Obviously, our school nurse is part of it. We have 2 board members who are volunteering their time yet again to be part of that team. Of course, I'm the chief facilitator. I'm sure I'm missing some people because we're at 36. And what happens is, and we've had 2 meetings. We met for 2 hours today. We met for 2 hours last week. We have 2 meetings scheduled for next week. We talk about some of the thoughts, ideas, and plans that we're working on, and that team really informs and drives that work. And it's been a great experience. They come up with a lot of questions, what ifs and how tos that then send us back to do more research. The goal is to develop a plan of how we're going to return students to school in Eden. Okay? Every district has the same goal. Every district has the same deadline, which is July 31st. Now, I'm going to say this to you with all appreciation to the State Education Department and the Department of Health. The documents dropped, I think, on July 13th. So that gives us 17 or 18 days to put a team together to examine the big rocks and the tiny pebbles and put it into a document that can be consumed by our community and leads us to a healthy, safe return of student learning. And all along the way, we are navigating what we think we can do, what we should do. Let me put it a different way. What we can do and what we should do, and then trying to figure out whether those thoughts are accurate. I'm not telling you this because the work is hard. The work is incredibly hard, but it's even more important. So who cares how hard it is if we do the right thing by our students and our community? And when I say our community, I mean everyone who learns, works in the school district and sends their children to the school district as well as our community partners. So, and I see some names on here, and I know some of these folks are on the committee as well. So I really appreciate that they're here, and they can fact check me again through that comment piece if I misstep anyway. So our work really has been to talk about again how we open school, and we are required by the State Education Department to create really 3 lanes of return to school. The first lane is in person. Okay, in person, when we first thought about it, was easy. We've done that forever. Okay, in person means we bring kids back. We bring them all back. We love it. Can't wait for the day when we welcome all of our children back to school with the full cadre of things that make school fun and special for kids. So that was lane number 1. Lane number 2 is remote learning. We all learned about remote learning in about 48 hours time back in March. And we need to take the lessons we learned, those things that went really well and those things that didn't work so well, and make them better. So if we are in remote learning, we know how to do that. The difference with remote learning going forward versus what we really did in March, and when I say we, because we're all really doing the same thing, whether I was here or in a different district, is that we need to use remote learning as a means to provide new instruction rather than just the continuity of instruction that was already provided. That's a heavy, difficult lift, but it's one that the gift of time and experience is really going to put our teachers in a good position to handle. And then the third lane is a hybrid model. A hybrid model is a combination of the first 2. A hybrid means that students are in school sometimes and students are in school or are learning remotely other times. So those are our 3 lanes, big picture items, but let's get into a little bit of the smaller picture here so you understand really what we're dealing with. Let's go back to in-person learning. Okay, in-person learning, again, bringing students back into the building. The first question is, can we? But the more important question is, should we? And I think about that second question a lot. If the governor comes on and says, listen, if you think you can bring kids back fully, you need to think about whether you should. I'm going to agree with that statement because we know the COVID-19 is a highly contagious disease. We know a virus. We know that it is. We know more about how it's easily transferred through droplets. We know that wearing masks and social distancing are really beneficial, and we also know now that if we do come back in person, based on a document we got from SED yesterday, SED means State Education Department, we will absolutely have to keep children 6 feet apart. And how do we do that? How do we take a regular group of students, say we've got 18 or 20 in a classroom, do we have the physical space to do that? And I'm not sure that we do. I'm going to pause for a second because I can see a comment here that I don't know that I've. Oh, I hope I didn't lose you. Uh-oh. Shoot. I don't know what I did. I don't know what I
You're
did.
still on there.
Am I still on there right now?
Yes.
Hey, what did I do?
I don't know, but you're still on.
Okay.
You
Thank
can't
you.
see it, but you are.
Okay. Shoot.
Okay.
Thanks. Well, apparently you can see me, but I can't see that I'm still on. So I'm going to keep talking. And why don't you mute that? Why don't you mute that and leave that here? Am I still on there right now? I'm laughing at myself. So anyway, we were talking about in-person instruction and what that would look like and how and how that might look. So we know that we would have to keep children 6 feet apart, and how difficult that would be. So we're going to spend some time on developing plans for in-person instruction, but knowing that the limitations of that scenario will really be problematic for us. Thank you for those comments that you can see me. I appreciate it. My screen's frozen, but I now have an iPhone, so I can make sure that I'm still here. So thank you. I agree, Kirsten. You gotta love technology, but in this case, I think it's the user of the technology and not the tech itself. So in-person is going to be really difficult in mass. Okay. Remote instruction we can talk about a little bit. And as I said a second ago, the difficulty there is with what it will look like for our students and for our teachers, and how do we really effectively provide in-person instruction. And it's really, quite frankly, it's the model that I'm least interested in. I don't think there's anyone here who is a parent or a guardian or has kids that they love and care about that doesn't want to see them back in school in one way, shape, or form. I know that our teachers do. I know our administrators do. I certainly do. My wife is a teacher in Dunkirk. She's looking forward to seeing her students as well. So our goal is, number one, the health and safety of our students and our staff. And once we examine those goals, is bringing kids back in some way, shape, or form. Now, everything I'm sharing with you is preliminary. There are no final decisions that have been made. I'm just sharing with you where we are today in terms of the work into that big rock work of reopening schools. So just to reiterate again, in-person, 100% in-person is going to be very difficult because of the space constraints of all schools. More likely than not, in-person students would have to wear masks and be socially distant, which is really tough. There is a probability that even in a hybrid model, students will have to wear masks, adults will have to wear masks. We're going to talk about temperature checks in a second. And how that is going to impact students for sure, and then teaching and learning. So a remote model, again, we want to bring them back. We know the difficulties there, but we know that we can get better. So then you look at a hybrid model. And a hybrid model really means doing both, as I said a moment ago. And in this case, doing both would mean bringing some students in a couple of days a week while other students are learning remotely, and then flipping that group. So think about it this way. Look at it as like maybe a 2-1-2 model. The first 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, the one is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday would be the other two. So we bring, I don't know, we'll call it Group A. Group A in Monday and Tuesday, while Group B is learning remotely Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, A and B are home. If we pick Wednesday, we could always pick a different day. Are at home learning remotely, making connections with teachers, whether it's through office hours or posted lessons or Zoom or Google Meets. Probably Google Meets is going to be I think it's called Google Meets, is going to be a big component for us. And then Thursday, Friday, the A group will be home continuing to learn remotely, and the B group will be in school. Now, why do we do this? Is because it allows us to socially distance students. It allows us to, and again, still in the planning stages, allows us to bring some students back into the building at a time. And in Eden, one of the things I'm very proud of our administrative team for thinking this way. They are working on what's called a household model. And a household model, and it is really, really, really labor intensive, where we take the entire population of our student body, 1,300 and I'll say 50 students, and determine who's in the same household. Now, some of you out there know that your household, there's a variety, there may be different last names, there's certainly different grade levels, so on and so forth, and we know that. So each of our principals is going through and developing household lists. And what we're trying to do is to ensure that households are in school or learning remotely at the same time. So if you're a parent and you have students at multiple levels, you've got a third grader, a seventh grader, and an 11th grader. They would be in school and be working remotely at the same time. If you've got a third, a kindergartner and a first and second grader, they would be in school and be remote at the same time. That promotes an opportunity for parents and guardians to be proactive in terms of childcare. Whether it's the older student that is watching the younger ones, or you make some arrangements with your work or whomever you utilize for childcare. So we're trying to provide some predictive value for our households so that they can care for their children. That I think is best that we can do for our community in that model. Okay. We know that families and households rely on the school not only for the education of the children, but to know that they're cared for and that they're learning not just about curriculum, but learning all those other things that we teach in school. So that is it's a heavy lift, but it's worth doing, because I think it'll work best for our students and our families. The second piece of that is we need to work out how that remote component will look. We are in the very early stages of having discussions with our large group about what that might look like. I'm sure there's some teachers on this meeting as well, and I don't want to alarm you. We're not doing this to you. We're doing this with you. There are a number of teachers on our district level meeting. This afternoon, I asked our principals to start developing implementation team plans. Those plans will really start in earnest probably in August. I know I neglected to mention that while July 31st is the deadline for providing the plans to state ed and to have them posted on our website, sometime after that, in the first week of August, Governor Cuomo is going to notify schools about what we will be doing. So meaning, he may say, we are welcome to open in a model that is best fit for our district based on the science and the availability of hospitals in your area. He may say, as he did previously, that we're going to wait another 2 weeks to decide, or that schools aren't going to open for in-person instruction until this date or that date. I have no idea, but we will be nimble in our response to make sure that we have plans that meet whatever he throws our way. Okay. I have to tell you, I'm really disappointed. I'm not getting any questions here. Maybe I'm not seeing them, but I will keep talking at you then. So again, really trying to determine what that remote instruction will look like. As I mentioned earlier, I was on that call, on that Zoom call with the interim commissioner, and one of the things she talked about is that SED has been very clear about the expectation for daily substantial contact between teachers and students, and it is up to the district to define what substantial means. So thank you, Debbie. I'm glad it's informative. I appreciate that. So that will be some of our work as well. And again, feedback from our community will drive this work. And I've gotten some. I know that there were some areas, and even in the district that I came from, there were some areas that were just a fantastic job. And there's other areas of education that it's really hard. I won't say impossible, but I'll say really, really hard to instruct remotely. So we will continue to work as best we can in those areas, and get better and better. So thank you, Janet. Does planning include how busing of students would work? That is a fantastic question. We are lucky to have a really, really outstanding transportation supervisor. I have asked her to take a look at what it would mean in the different scenarios, not remote, but what it would mean if we were in person and have to socially distance on a bus. What would that mean? Would drivers need to do multiple runs for when it's typically one run? And what I mean by that, if we are limited by the number of students we can have on a bus, how many times would a driver need to go out to get all the children they're responsible for to school? And about what time do we think they would get there? I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to find out that if we do go full in person and we have to socially distance on a bus, and which is still a question out there, by the way, that school probably wouldn't start till about 10 o'clock in the morning. So think about this. You have students arriving at whatever our regular time is, and the rest of their classmates don't get in till later. So that's a big hurdle we need to overcome. I will tell you that in terms of busing, students will be required, drivers will be required to wear a mask at all times. So a student gets on the bus, he or she has a mask on, they sit down, they keep the mask on, they get off the bus, the mask is still on. If a student comes out to the bus and they don't have a mask, they forgot it, for whatever reason, we will have one on the bus for them. I want to talk about temperature checks, and then Christy, I'll get to your question about what would remote instruction look like. And if I forget, Christy, just please remind me. So we are required to do some things to ensure that people who are entering our buildings are not experiencing any symptoms of COVID-19. Every morning when I walk in, I have to sign off on a form that I haven't traveled to any of the now 31 states that are on Governor Cuomo's list, that I don't have a fever or any other symptoms or been exposed to anyone to the best of my knowledge. And when school reopens, I'll not only have to do that, but I also have to have my temperature checked. And that's because the regulations are very clear that any adult, any staff member, any visitor to the building has to have their temperature checked upon arrival. Okay. The regulations are less stringent when it comes to our students. And SED actually says in their documentation that the preferred method is for parents to temperature check and go through the COVID-19 questionnaire. Although I'm pretty confident our parents will know if their children travel to one of the 31 states before they get on the bus, before they leave for school. We in Eden, in many communities, have a really great partnership with our community. It needs to get even stronger. Okay, it needs to be that there's a high level of trust when you send your children to me, to our schools, that we're going to care for them, that we're going to have healthy protocols in place, that we're going to address any illnesses quickly and effectively and limit any exposure for your child or for any of our teachers or any of our staff. And we will have those plans in place, not just because they're required, but because we should have them. And on my side, I need to have a high level of trust that our families are going to do those temperature checks, and they are going to know if their child's been exposed to anyone, and they're going to have a high level of trust in our nursing staff and our building principals to share out if there is a concern. Okay. So we're at this point, again, we're in the early planning stages that will quickly ramp up over the next several days. The thought is to have those temperature checks before students get on the bus, with the means to recheck when kids get to school as needed or as warranted. Okay. So yes, Jeanette, I think I answered most of your question that we are planning about how students will get to school. We are going to post a survey to our community in the very near future. Probably won't go out until early next week. And one of the big questions there, is really important for us, is asking if families are going to transport their child themselves. We have a sneaking suspicion that because of the requirements on the bus and maybe even some concerns about density on a bus, even if we do social distance, that we will have more car traffic on our campuses, and parents are going to choose to transport their children. So when you get that survey, please share with us your thoughts. And the survey is most likely going to say, I'm absolutely going to, well, absolutely is a strong word. I'm going to transport my child to and from school, won't need transportation. And then there'll be some middle of the roads. I expect I'm going to transport my child, but I may still need transportation in the morning or in the afternoon. And then, probably another choice of, yes, my child's going to need transportation to and from school. There's absolutely no pressure from me for parents to transport their children. I just want to be able to plan appropriately for the fall. Okay. So throw more transportation questions out there if you like. Christy, what would remote instruction look like? We are simply at the brainstorming stage at this point. Okay. And I really need to work with the teachers and the teachers union about what that can look like. What I do know, and what we learned from the spring, is that some families really liked a rigid schedule, meaning you're in math from 9 to 10, you're in English from 10 to whatever, and so on and so forth. And they had the bandwidth and the technology at home to do that, and they had the ability in their own personal lives to oversee it and help their children. Other families said, I can't do a rigid schedule. I'm working during the day. My time to work with my child is sometime late afternoon and evening. So how can that work for us? And our response as a school is, we need to find a way to make it work for both. Okay. And that's where our brainstorming is going next. How can we help families that are in that first category, and how can we help those families that are in that second category as well? And the other thing that we know too, particularly, with our younger students, um, you know, remote learning in kindergarten and pre-K and first grade, second grade, really, really hard. I heard from a lot of teachers, both friends and from some folks in Eden, that they got to meet a lot of family pets through different Zoom meetings with our younger students and siblings and so on and so forth, which is great. But it's really hard to deliver new instruction in that model too with those students. We absolutely know that our older students, they're on a different time schedule than many folks. So if we can adjust to their rhythms, or at least have that opportunity to adjust, then we should. So if they're a young person that, or in this case, an older person in terms of school age, that really wants to have at it at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, can we design something that allows that? And if they're someone that sleeps in late, if you've got teenagers like 9:30, that's when they typically get up. That's my humor. We meet their needs as well. So I think, Christy, it's going to be a really eclectic approach as best we can, and then the question is, how do we deliver that? Okay. So we got about 10 minutes left. I'm pretty much out of voice. We covered the 3 models. We covered the temperature checks. What other questions do you have for me personally, or about my background, which probably not too many questions about that, or about the budget revote, or about our return to school? Thanks, Elaine. So what happens if someone is diagnosed with COVID? We have real specific guidelines on that. So, if someone is diagnosed, is diagnosed with COVID, and it's, they've been in the school, it's a student, a staff member, it's me, whoever it is, our first call is to the Department of Health to ask what the guidelines are, and follow them to the letter. We have some great resources in our area, and the Department of Health certainly is one of them. If it's someone that comes down with symptoms during the day, we will have plans for isolation, and supervised isolation, of course, and have them picked up and follow the particular protocols. Contact their physician, follow testing protocols if so required. Shannon has a question. When does the district have to submit the plan to the state? So July 31st, which I know is a week from tomorrow, I have to actually answer about 10 pages of assurances to the state education department that we have done these things that are in the documents, in the guiding documents, and I need to provide them with a link to our plan, which will be posted on our webpage. Now, again, that meeting I was in earlier with the interim commissioner, she very much understands that these are living documents, that the plan that we come up with in 2 weeks absolutely should change, and it will change. Some of those changes will be driven by things we learn, and some of those changes will be driven by things that our community, and again, remember how I described community earlier, and how our community informs us. So, Tabra, we have a three-tiered plan, as I said earlier. We will have a plan for in-person, remote, and a hybrid model. That's what we are required to do, and it makes good sense. We will have standard plans that cover all three, and those are really in terms of the operation side of things. So think about cleaning protocols. Think about, we talked about busing a little bit. We will have plans for attendance, because daily attendance is required no matter what plan we're in. So we will have I'll call an umbrella in terms of the operation side of things that will impact all three plans. And then in terms of plans for an instruction, it'll be in those three different lanes that I mentioned earlier. Thanks for that question, Tabra. Okay, so we're really coming to the end of this hour. I appreciate everyone's attendance this evening. Thank you for helping me work through my technical difficulties, and for those mentions on those messages you sent me that I was actually still live, so I'm glad I knew that. If you have any other additional questions, thoughts, concerns, please email me. jsortisio@edencsd.org. Probably easier just to go to our district webpage to find my email address. You're welcome to call me as well. Amy, I did not see your question. All I saw was a question mark from you. Tabra, we need to reevaluate our cleaning staff and what we'll be able to do there. So, sorry, Amy, sorry if I missed your question. Okay, so I'm going to sign off now. Again, you can reach me at the district office. Please remember to vote on Tuesday, July 28th, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the foyer of the high school, middle school auditorium. And I apologize to Ellen and Jake. Your questions were not too hard for me, Jake. I didn't see it. Ellen, I did not see your question either. So I apologize. Doing the best I can and looking at a cell phone while some of these messages are going by. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate you coming to this Facebook Live event, and I hope you all have a great evening.